I will call this meeting to order, and we'll do the roll call.
Great, that sounds good. Nice to see everyone. We'll start with the chair and vice chair, as always. Mary
I am present.
and Catherine
Present.
and Jeanette,
Here.
Ernest.
I am here.
There he is. Great. Jessica. You may have said here, but I didn't hear it. Is that accurate? She may have froze up. We'll get back. Wolfgang.
Here.
Sue.
I'm here.
Tobia.
Here.
Andy.
Sorry, here.
There. Alex.
Here.
Lindell.
Here.
Great. And Jessica, I think you may have frozen for a second. Would you like to give out your here
Yeah,
there?
I did. I'm here.
Okay. We see you. Thank you. And welcome to Chief Brackney, Mayor Walker. Nice to see you here both as well. And I'll turn it back to Mary.
Right, and for our guests, I just let you know that we have the tradition of jointly stating our mission together at each of our meetings. So we will do that now. Act as a strong advocate
Strong advocate.
to justice and equal opportunity by providing citywide leadership
Citywide leadership and
guidance in the area of civil rights. All right, and we now have matters by the public. I'm not sure whether there are members of the public who would like to speak, but if you would, you can use the raise the hand function, or if you're on the phone, you can press *9.
We have three members of the public right now, and no one has a raised hand, but we can give it a second if folks are thinking about it.
And I would say we also have another opportunity at the end of our meeting for matters by the public, if we don't have anything right now. Well, even if we do have something right now, we have two opportunities. All right, looks like no matters by the public for right now, and so I will skip right by the commission response to matters by the public and move right on to approval of the minutes. So we've got minutes of the May 20th meeting. Do we, I guess we have thumbs up or yes for approving the minutes?
Yes.
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 Right. Anyone in opposition to approving the minutes? Okay, great.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. I should have asked for that. And so I think that takes us to our first business matter. We have, as you all know, both the mayor and our police chief here. Wolfgang, were you raising your hand? Sorry.
I was asking if we could activate subtitles. Thanks.
Okay. So we have both Mayor Walker and Chief Brackney here to have a conversation with us, and we're very appreciative that you all were both able to join us and here on the same night. Thank you. As you know, we had sent a letter to the City Council with some concerns about police issues, particularly with regard to violence nationwide and with regard to the city budget. And I'm not sure kind of how we should get started here, but I wanted to give both of you an opportunity, if you'd like, to start off by sharing any thoughts you have with us, and then of course we'll open it up and have a real conversation.
Yeah, I think at least for my end, that we wanted to just answer any questions that you had and just move forward from there. So that's probably best. just wanted to make sure everyone has the same information or.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sure folks have, lots of questions, and I will, I'm few written down myself, but I'm going to throw the floor open and see who wants to start us off with a question for either the mayor or the police chief or both. All right, well, I'm going to start it off then. We had written to the city council with some questions about the budget and kind of how the police budget breaks down. And we understood that a significant percentage of the budget is obviously personnel costs, but we would really like to know whether there is a version of the budget or information that will kind of demonstrate the functions and the programs that the police are performing and how the budget breaks down in that sense. That is, is 25% of the budget dealing with traffic offenses, or kind of how that breaks down more functionally, understanding that the vast majority of the budget is personnel costs. But if we're trying to understand what people are spending their time doing, how would we be able to determine that?
Chief Brackney, thank.
Yes, I'm sorry. That was clearly, yes.
So with any budgets, it's not like a not-for-profit where you assign a portion of your daily work to a certain budget amount and that's how it's funded or supported. We do services and we're service related. So each of those days it will change as well. So for example, we're driven by the 911 calls and the number of calls that we receive each year. So you can't say, oh, is this proportion based on traffic? Is there a 911 call that will determine whether there's an accident, a traffic? Our community service officers, we have specific ones who do certain things like traffic. We have traffic divisions that do traffic. But as you're trying to proportion out what each officer would do every single day, the majority of it is going to be responding to your 911 calls and patrolling in a variety of ways. And then there's sections of it where they're the detectives who are investigating crimes that have occurred as well. So unlike most places where you're trying to apportion, when you have a service related versus a program, as I say all the time, we don't do programs much like after school is a program in which you will then conduct tutoring or wraparound services or social services or some additional support. It is a service that the city offers, and it is driven and supported by 911 as the primary way in which we engage. And then there's also different components of it. When you see our budget, we have a complete records and administration section that is all civilian. That's where all your records, your reports, those persons who are missing and things of that nature, any warrants or individuals, license for taxis, et cetera, that we process, fingerprinting as well. So it's much more difficult to codify. We have a very extensive budget that we place online. We have a very extensive budget that we place online and has been made available to the public as well. So it might help if you've looked at the budget, not the one that necessarily that the city has, but it's a very detailed budget. You will see it is the majority of their time is actually in patrol and operations, supported by our support, our records, our administrative division, and our investigations branch.
I have looked at that budget and I guess I'm still perplexed. I mean, I think surely the officers keep track of their hours and kind of functionally what they do during those hours. Is there not a way to report on kind of the percentage of time spent on different functions. That just, it strikes me as something that most, not just nonprofits, but most businesses can do to say how people are spending their time.
So as you know, Mary, it's a very different system. It is based on what 911 drives and asks us to do. On each and every single day, you can see the officers will have the calls that they're responding to. You'll see our incidents are posted on our website. It does say how many times they're on patrol. Can you aggregate those? They're pulled out of the 911 CAD system is the best way to aggregate them as well. And no, we don't have the capacity or the resources. It would have to come out of IT, who is the one who puts together all of these for us, as well as our ECC, to see what the officers are doing. If you're trying to put percentages or label percentages of the time that they spend on each additional activity. You also have to remember that unlike other activities, if I'm at a workspace, one single 911 call could possibly leverage 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 officers to the exact same call. So how are you quantify that would also be a challenge as well. But I'm sure there are some people who, if there's some data analyst person who would like to work with us to see how we could do a work percentage studies, you're going to figure out that the majority of them are on patrol during that time, and each day is very different as to the type of work that they would be doing. But if there's if the commission wants to work with us on figuring out a way in which we could capture that, that's sure, I'm more than willing to look at ways in which we think we might be able to capture the data to see what it does mean for our personnel and how it impacts the city. And then what we would do with that data as to how we would then want it then to be utilized and in what way.
I see a couple hands up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Catherine had her hand up first.
Oh, yeah, Catherine.
I just wanted to follow up on that. I have two questions, Chief Brackney. You do have a data analyst position, I believe, within the police department. So I guess I would like to hear more about what that person does and can
we don't have a
provide.
data analyst.
And two,
we don't have a data analyst, Catherine. We have an intel analyst who does intelligence gathering. We don't have a data one. That position was eliminated.
And then you have a new system that was purchased, and I can't remember exactly when, if it was before or after you
We don't have a new system.
Huh?
We do not have a new system. The system that is in place, Tyler New World, was before I was here, and it is due to expire. Actually, it did expire March of this year. So there is not the system, and they did not create ways in which they could, that was not part of the ECC records management system. Mm-hmm. It was not a time effective and efficiency study system. So no, we don't have that at all.
Okay, and then I guess, well, let me just ask this. I hear you saying that these are services and you can't predict day to day. But I wonder then, if you can't predict day to day and you don't have any good sense of what to expect, how do you staff the police department? How do you make choices about staffing? I think as a person who works sometimes as a nurse in the emergency department, we have kind of a similar setup, right? We get what we get in the door. Yeah, sometimes we're understaffed, sometimes we're overstaffed, but there is some ability to capture that data and some ability to predict generally day to day that works fairly well for most situations.
So yes, that's a very different question and a very different response. What will they do on a daily basis is different. So we base it on our crimes and our calls for service. And as you know, we can track those kinds of things, the number of calls that they answer over a time frame. And I don't have it off the top of my head, so please no one quote me on this. I think we're about to post our annual report, but if they answer approximately 60,000 calls a year, that can then be broken down by the number of calls for disturbances and things of that nature. Those are easily quantifiable. The number of arrests that they do, the number of traffic stops, community engagements, and things of that nature. So yes, you can talk about what you might expect for the day, how much or percentage of your day that you would dedicate to that is very different. So we staff it by what the models have told us around the number of crimes. If you look at our shots fired and our shootings and things of that nature, as of, I think it was a week and a half ago, we had over 120 shootings in the city. So we do have that kind of data and patterns coming in, and that doesn't necessarily mean what you're going to spend your time dedicated to. I would like to have a very clean box that say that we spend 10% of our time on admin and 20% of our time writing reports, or 80% patrolling. The other ones, community engagement, community meetings, etc. But then that would be having to do that for each individual officer and attempting to aggregate that data, and everyone's is very different. In addition to that, you have the exempt employees who don't necessarily quantify their data in the same way. So for instance, today is a day I started at say 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be finishing at 7:30 tonight or later, or the weekend. So you do have what reasonably will you expect that will be driven by the 911 calls. Detectives could probably do it a bit differently about how they quantify their time, because that is much more controlled by their schedule versus say the 911 driven as well. Hopefully that answered your question.
Wolfgang, did you have a question?
I had two. The first is related to the use of data. I know we have a couple data sci-minded folks within the team, and I'd be curious, Chief Brackney, if the information that you are suggesting is publicly available, and sort of just what format, just more information about the kind of information that we could have access to.
So absolutely, your incident reports are on, we publish them daily. So the incident reports are on our website daily, as well as our charging data. So for arrests daily, those are all on your our websites. And then in addition to that, for additional things, we publish our shots fired weekly as well. It's all also on our website. In terms of what drives us, our ECC produces all of that data that is publicly available as well through ECC. So I'm not sure if there's any additional spaces or
Just, like,
type of things.
in terms of capturing like officer time spent, that information is publicly available?
No, just where they would be driven to, the 911 calls, those kinds of things. No.
Okay, so I guess if we were trying to capture how much time is spent per money spent, we wouldn't have actually be able to capture time spent. We'd be capturing incidents and like the results.
Right, and you might not, and again, if you're thinking about an incident, it's not like, you have a delivery service or a time frame where you're trying to get something done in 20 minutes. So you may have a domestic call or a disturbance call that lasts, say, 10 minutes, or you may have a disturbance call that lasts, or a domestic call that lasts 3 hours, when you're doing paperwork and processing. So in terms of our best use of our data, I guess what I would say is the best available data that you would have is how we respond through 911 calls. If you're looking at the primary or the largest component of the department, which is operations and patrol.
Okay, I'm gonna marinate on that a little bit more, but thank you.
I'm sorry.
The second question I have, yeah, my computer's doing all kinds of things this afternoon, so bear with me. The second question that I have relates to budgeting. And I know that the city over the past 5-ish years has gone towards pivoting towards more performance-based budgeting, to just base budgets on performance goals and objectives, and program missions and purposes. So I'm curious as if our police department has considered a similar approach, and if so, what sort of indicators you think would be able to capture performance?
So the city has not gone to that, and nor have they mentioned it. Dr. Richardson instituted a zero-based budget, in which we put our budgets in front of them as a zero base, as here are the monies that we need in order to perform certain services. And that's the budget that we've been presenting since he arrived here. So if the city has any plans to move that to differently, then they'll have to give every department direction on how they might want to put that forward.
And I'll just chime in. I think the conversation around performance has been, we've been trying to, once we have an HR director that can look at performance of staff members, annual ratings to drive raise and incentives, that's been the discussion around that, but we've been talking about that the entire time I've been here, and we haven't had a stable HR department either to move in that direction in terms of COLA and annual raises. So that may be where you, what you're thinking about, but that's not in place yet either.
I guess maybe performance-based budgeting is too heavy-handed for what the city does. Like, I guess every budget is based around the strategic goals of the city. And there are certain, like, I've seen certain indicators that, you know,
Yes.
social services measures some of their performance is based on inclusive communities, health and safety city, and it could, their budgets speak to
You went out.
specific goals. And I'm wondering if I need to repeat that.
Yes, you went out.
It might help if you turn your video off while you're talking.
How much did you get?
It was really hard to hear
Yeah.
any of that.
Oh,
Social
my
services,
use-
last thing I heard, the word social services.
okay. I'll just try to remember everything. I was saying that I might have overused the term performance-based budgeting. From the budgets that I've seen, you know, they try to fit within the strategic goals of the city. And so, for example, social services budgets specifically refer to the city's goals, you know, inclusive communities, health and safety city, safe city. And I was wondering if the police department would be considering a similar approach.
The entire city has to do that when they ask for their budget. So whenever we all say the same thing, whatever goal it is that it is matching, is how we all have to do it for particular things. So if we are looking for equipment, it has to align with one of the goals, and then you have to align, or I'm sorry, the ask is, how does this ask align with one of the city's goals? And when you typically see that, it is under asking for beyond the budget. So does the training, professional development align with the city's goals? When we're looking for equipment or vehicles, or when we're moving to how we might want to add more bicycles, that aligns with the city's goals to reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our reliance, or reduce our fleet, et cetera. So we already do that as well.
And in the budget book, each section, and so the police department is under public safety and justice. So everyone I just grabbed the book to look at it, everyone in that area, but is mostly aligned with the a healthy and safe city goal. And then there's one goal under the police budget for office of chief and police administration that's aligned with a well-managed and responsive organization. I will say that even though we see this in our current budget documents, it's something that we are very aware of isn't always aligned to what we hope it is aligned with. And we're hoping to get probably where you're going with this question, where we are able to establish new goals and objectives with a new strategic plan, and hopefully that aligns more closely with what we prioritize and how dollars are allocated. But we haven't done that yet either. But we do have every department, when they present their budget documents annually, and even when there's a memo presented to City Council for funding that's aligned with our current strategic plan goals. I was just adding, we've been talking about this new strategic plan, and we have voted twice to stick with the current plan. And we are now in the process of trying to secure facilitators for the strategic plan that will guide us for a 3 to 5 year period. But we haven't done a new strategic plan since I've been on council. So we are operating from what was voted on by the previous council.
Chief Brackney, I'm just curious about the kind of information that individual officers are required to maintain. Just for example, I assume there's some sort of, timesheet that officers must complete in order to get paid appropriately each week. And what kind of information are officers required to keep about the way that they are spending their time?
So they keep their timesheets about how they get paid is, do they show up for that day? If we're just talking the day, not the activity, it's just like any other person. You start the day and it's your 8-hour day, and your day is filled in based on the supervisors. But yes, they do keep on a daily basis where they're doing their time. And we track that also via our ECC or our 911. So if they're out on extra patrols, that's captured. If they're out with an incident report or they're back at the station, that's captured. When they're moved from one location to another, that's captured as they're responding to calls. So yes, they do have those. And again, that's how our activities are logged on a daily basis as to what the officers are doing. But if you're asking, if they're just saying, am I driving around patrolling? They're not going to capture that as much as they're capturing the things that they're doing. Much like, I guess the best analogy I can make is, if you look at any of our calendars, it's not going to capture everything that we do in the day, only those things that we've set probably as an appointment or a reminder or a Zoom link or something of that nature. So I guess what I'm hearing you saying is, how do they account for every minute of every day? It's just a near impossibility for any person or even the police department to account for every minute of every day.
Well, there certainly are occupations where people have to report kind of with some specificity how they are spending their time. Attorneys, for example, keep very careful track of their time, and there are systems set up, and it's not particularly onerous if if that is done on a daily basis to say these are really very specifically the tasks that I completed this week and the way that I spent my time. I take it that's
right for their billable hours, correct? Not just their,
no, for all of our time.
I'm not sure how much more what you would want for me to say to you. I've explained to you as best I can. I'm sorry if that's not the answer that satisfies the question. I do apologize for that. I've just explained that they're on the radio a lot. They're tracked through their CADs. They're tracked through their 911s. They're tracked through their police reports. They're tracked through a variety of things. And I'm sorry that's not the answer that feels satisfactory to you, but that is how it is. I would ask, if you think about our ambulance service or even our fire services, they track where they go for that moment, not what they spend the entire rest of the day doing, whether they're on patrol or things like that. They track the specific incident that they are a part of. And that's the entire public safety realm. And I'm sorry that it doesn't quantify the way that we would like it to quantify.
And I think what I'm hearing, and we've heard this discussion before, is that if we're ever going to, if the majority of budget is personnel, and if we're ever going to be able to decrease the budget, how are we going to know when it's time to decrease the budget, right? Is that where we're trying to get to with this questioning?
And what functions really need to be performed by law enforcement officers with weapons versus functions that should be performed or could be performed by other occupations.
And so maybe that's, you know, I'm taking notes, so I now know that, you know, that is still part of the desire, but what the outcome is, so that when I'm talking to the other counselors and, you know, that we, you know, we'll be on the same page. So I'm noting that. But there is a group that is also looking at that Vice Mayor McGill and Councilor Snook are the council members on it. Chief Brackney's on that group. Kaki's on that group. I'm not on that group, so Chief Brackney, you can say who else is on that group. That's looking at, in terms of mental health response, how do we move from police responding to incidents to the appropriate, and how do we get in our community, how do we ensure that we have the appropriate organizations and people in place and funded so that so we can shift that from the police department to, and Chief Brackney, you can talk about more if you want, what's happening at this time in that group.
So yes, so part of that group is also Region 10, ECC, other persons whose lived experience have been part of the system or have been somehow swept up in the system, whether they were managing mental health crises. And there's quite a few of those individuals, including Dr. Smith from the fire department is part of that team, as well as I'm trying to look at who we deal with. Jay James, Bridge Ministries are also part of those. And the whole purpose is, the primary anchor of it is that there are some mandates by the Marcus Alert that we're going to have to do first through 911 and through the region. And how do we walk back those systems from the timeline of where you might have to implement according to what the legislature says that we must do, and where we can be. And is there opportunities to decouple policing from those persons who are in a mental health crisis, and how might that be implemented? The legislation has more of the mandates around the 911 system and what they need to have in place, and with the mobile crisis response teams by the 5 different regions by 2023, 24, 25, and 26. It's set out in some timelines. The more challenging aspect of all of this is typically when there is an ECO or TDO response, there is a law enforcement response that is required through legislature that says that we are the ones who must take people into custody and transport them back and forth to state assigned beds. And we have like 72 hours that we may sit with them. So as much work as we may be wanting to do with the task force until we can get the legislature to roll back when there is police involvement, we are hitting some roadblocks. But where's there opportunity to not just realign resources, but to build capacity in this community? So we may have resources, but if you have no capacity for beds or for the equivalent of, say, a drop-in crisis center or a drop-in or a 24-hour facility, we may have more challenges. And it's not as simple as moving the budget from one place to the next. You may be able to move the money, but not have the capacity for the community to do the work based on what the current legal restraints are, or even just even possibly the expertise in the community. So as you build capacity and deconstruct systems, almost has to go on at the exact same time.
I'm sorry,
There
there've actually been a few hands raised that
Several
I,
hands raised. I was gonna
yeah, I'm
call you.
sorry about that. I
Yep.
missed seeing the little thing. Andy, you wanna go next?
Jessica was first, I think.
Well, yeah, Jessica and Lindell were before, so Jessica can go ahead.
All right, great.
Thanks. I raised my hand and I realized the virtual hand is better. So thank you, Mayor Walker and Chief Brackney, for being here. I'm glad that you're here. We sent out a letter. I don't know if you had a chance to read it in April about the response in our community and wanting to make change. As an African-American woman, a woman raising 2 Black children, it's unnerving to see what's happening in our country. And I thank you both for your work that you're doing. And Mayor Walker, I appreciate just the letters that have gone out when our country was in uproar. It's uneasing. And I'm hoping to hear from you both today. I understand, Chief Brackney, all that you said. I think what our commission and I care most about is like, what do we do in the meantime? Because our city, I'm scared. Like I'm a very like law-abiding citizen, but every time a cop's behind me, like I'm scared. And so I want to know like what we can do as a commission in the meantime, when we're trying to change these huge, large systems that are beyond us. How can we ensure that we're giving those that are reaching out to us underneath our mission to address what we need to address in the city? How can we provide them supports? How can we provide outreach? How can we provide education for them? In this meantime, where it's scary to be out here. It's scary to be in my home. It's scary just to be living as a Black woman and raising 2 beautiful kids. I just wanted to hear your response. And Mayor Walker, I'm not sure if your other council members were able to read our letter and our statement, and if there's things that you want to share related to that. Thank you for.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'll start with answering that. So along with the mental health task force, we also, the committee or working group that I am, I guess, chairing, we are all on it, but Chief Brackney, Joe Platania, Liz Murtaugh, Kaki Demick, a lot of community members with lived experience. We started out with more members than who are currently participating, but we still have like some ebb and flow with them coming, into the meetings and sharing. And so what we have done is we've taken the DMC study, and I'll just say upfront, we are planning to have, hopefully, working groups planning to have. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mayor Walker, what is DMC?
The disproportionate minority contact study that was done maybe 2-3 years ago, which just showed us like in our criminal justice system in our community, just where some of our flaws are. And there were some flaws even with that reporting, but what we have attempted to do is get together to see where those individuals who are in positions of influence, what can we change in those systems? And we're gonna have a community meeting, most likely in August, and we're gonna have a presentation and get some feedback, and then have presentations to council about funding requests. In our group, the Imagining a Just C-ville group, it has already resulted in Chief Brackney, Joe Platania's office already doing some of the work to try to, figure out where we can interrupt, interrupt some of the processes that are not going well. And so those things are happening. And we acknowledge that, where we are in our world and where we've been for too long, and that, change needs to happen. So we are making that investment, and we will have, community meetings related to that. And if I left something out, just let me know. But Chief Brackney, if you want to chime in there and even tell them about, any information you want to share about the group.
So thank you. So when you talk about disrupting systems and interrupting processes. I started in, I believe, October of 2018 was the first investigative detention that I had posted on the website, where we started drilling down on officer interactions. So that is also an additional place for those of you who want to look to see how we spend our time. So we started drilling down on officer interactions, particularly officer initiated encounters in which they had discretion and then chose to encounter someone in this community. And we started building literally now data for the last 2.5 years, probably a little bit more now, more than 2.5 years on our officers' interactions, and they're all on the website. But what I said is, what we're really trying to figure out is officer discretion. And when there's these opportunities not to introduce someone into the criminal legal system, what influences officers to do that or not to do that? So I have an intern that we asked for as a social justice project with Squires, Patton and Boggs to give me an intern. They are now looking at 2019 and 2020, all of the data that we have posted on our website. And we're looking at when an officer had discretion and they initiated an encounter with any individual in the Charlottesville community. What were those factors that they used to decide when they had probable cause to arrest or reasonable suspicion or whatever to introduce them or to let them go? And then we're following that through all the way to Joe Platania's office through the final outcomes to see the full impact of when someone is introduced into the criminal legal system. And if there's opportunities for us to identify those variables that could have changed or influenced the officer's decision, how do we do that in a way that is just and equitable as well? The intern we're using is not connected with UVA or any local person. She is a 3L law student out of the University of Texas and is supported by the very large law firm that we are working with. And that's important for a lot of reasons. If you can get to officer discretion, you can then get to see if there is disparate and disproportionate encounters and outcomes as well. And we have 2 full years now since I've been collecting that data. We did not use 2021 because we're not complete. In 2018, we only have September, October, November, December. So 2 full data set years.
So I just wanted to follow up. That's actually really great to hear. I am asking from like an outreach perspective, what can we do to create programming or informationals of like how we should appropriately engage with cops? What are processes? How can we build a sense of confidence in our community when a police officer comes, that we can work in partnership with you, that our commission can then share that information to the public so we can build a sense of trust, because it's scary out here. So that's what I'm asking, but that's good to know about that study.
So there are, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you can go.
So there are a couple of things. I just happen to have it in front of me, and I had talked with, I believe it was back in 2019 is when Charlene first came to me about it. I know the commission already does these handouts about what to do when you encounter the police. So you already have those things. There is a group in which I belong to, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, NOBLE. They do trainings, community trainings on just these type of, the law in you is what it's called. There are lots of, I think, opportunities, but I think the question is, how do we tailor one for ours? And that's just more than a quick 30-second answer here. That would require we actually work and collaborate with each other and actually have some regular dialogue with each other as well to see exactly what type of programs or outreach collaboratively that we would be interested in. And it has to be collaboratively, whether we like that or not. We know that people may trust a specific police officer, but not the institution of policing. So therefore you develop those relationships, and those are the persons that also help as well.
I think Lindell, you were up next.
If I can just chime in, we're actually having this kind of discussion, so I just wanted to give you an example. There are certain members of our, CRHA community who are asking for more police presence. There are members within those same neighborhoods who are asking for a decreased presence. And so we're getting that, both of those requests at the same time. There's also we just want you to make sure we're safe if an incident happens, and there's a request that says we want your officers out on foot patrol talking to us. Some people see an officer out on foot patrol and just think that officer is closer to me to do me some harm. Some people think the officer is out on foot patrol, that means that they want to make sure that the community is safe and I have a ability to get to know them better. So we are still, trying to, figure out, exactly what the community wants, which direction to go in, and whether it's this like community policing model that we're going to create, or whether people only want the police to respond in emergencies. And we're getting, two different, requests. But I think also what you're saying is just the accountability so that what is happening across the country is not happening here. And I hope that some of the stuff that comes out of both of these working groups help with that. I don't think there always needs to be a police response. There doesn't always need to be police, engagement, and that a lot of people are not going to feel safe with that. But when there has to be police, engagement, that it is healthy and that the police are responding and treating no matter what the incident is, as best as possible. And I hope some of the work that we're doing shows that, we also want those same things. And that's what Chief Brackney is trying to, build under her leadership, of the department.
And Jessica, if I could just add on to this. So just because the work I represent in a uniform, I think sometimes this community forgets that when you say you're raising, and it resonated with me, you're raising two beautiful Black sons. Well, I am married to a beautiful, fine, handsome, 6'2" Black man. My brother is Black. My cousins are Black. My friends are Black. So I often take, and I hope I don't offend, exception when people think it's okay to assume that just because I wear a uniform, that what I care about most every single day isn't shaped and informed by my everyday lived experiences. And although I wear a uniform, I walk out the door every day as a Black woman. So I understand your fears and I understand your concerns. And from the first day I arrived here, I said, I'm not here to add to any of your pain. I'm not here to add to Charlottesville's trauma. They've already experienced enough of it. But at the exact same time, when we're talking about systems and processes, and no one walks in the door and says, just trust me because I am who I am. I think over the last 3 years, effectively tomorrow, 3 years, I've gone above proving that I am about this work and not about the momentary headlines that you see a lot of chiefs seeking across the nation. We do a lot. There is so much on our website now that has changed about transparency and accessibility, that if you're authentically interested in it, it is on our website. But I bring these ideas forward. The community also has to be willing to work with me. I just happen to see your note, are you willing to collaborate with us? I came right out and said, hey, we have to do this together. But collaboration would mean communication, right? And the first time I hear about what the HRC was interested in, And the demands for the department is when I hear that there was some letter sent, I don't even think the letter was sent to me as part of what the commission was asking. So that makes it real difficult for us to communicate and to figure out how we can help and support each other.
So I'm on the, thank you, Mayor Walker and Chief, I appreciate it. And I have, it's a son and a daughter, so two beautiful children, so I
I'll
appreciate.
take it. I got a beautiful black daughter too, that I want to keep healthy and safe every single day.
They are fiery, so I do this for them, so I appreciate both of you just listening. And I am the chair of our community engagement, so that's why I was asking that, like whatever that needs to look like in our communication moving forward. And thank you, Mayor Walker. I always love that you hear and you process what's saying and then get at the heart of what I was trying to get at. So I just thank you. I know others have their hand raised, but I just wanted to respond back to you responding to me. So thank you for your time here today. And Chief Brackney, I will put in the chat the letter now so you can have the link for it later.
And we do actually have a lot of hands up, so I'm hoping we can kind of hit those folks. And Liddell, I think you're up next.
Yes, I thank you very much, Chief Brackney, for all the responses that you've given. First of all, for showing up and for your responses, and I acknowledge the work and efforts that you've been trying to do. I've seen it. I also want to thank Mayor Walker for sharing with us the other community efforts that are ongoing. I appreciate hearing about them and learning about them, and would like to learn more. So I know the work is happening and I appreciate it. I also wanted to, mostly what Jessica said is what I wanted to say. So thank you, Jessica, for bringing that up. I did want to just say one thing that seems really important to me and doesn't negate the work that you are doing, Chief Brackney. But I am very concerned about armed police response and the consequences of that happen over and over and over again. And I just want to know, are there efforts, are there discussions about managing armed responses to calls and to situations? I'd like to see fewer armed responses because they tend to result in violence. So I'm just asking that. What are your thoughts on that? Are there opportunities for reducing the number of guns that are on the streets in the hands of police as well?
So let me think how I can frame this, and thank you for the question, Lindell. Is so how we're dispatched is determined by some other place, right? Everyone often thinks that we dispatch ourselves, or when they call that they're speaking directly with the police. That's not the case at all. So we are dispatched by that. Is there an effort to unarm our officers? No, there are not any efforts to reduce that the officers are not armed. Are we increasing our community service officers, the ones that you see particularly around Barracks Road, the corner, the pedestrian mall, you know, those kinds of, and some reason the screen just shifted on me, so I apologize. So you moved on my screen, Lindell. So we are trying to do more of those things as well. Is the community demanding that we're the ones that are unarmed? Again, it's mixed. You know, I testified in front of Congress about the number of high-powered rifles and weaponry that is in the United States right now, and that is extremely unsettling for us. But if we're talking about unarming our officers, no, there's no talks that I've been participating in or see. How we're dispatched, or the type of calls that we now go to, where people are asking, is there a co-responder model? That's what we're discussing in the work groups, in which I sit on both of them, both the work group for the Marcus Alert and the work group for an Imagining a Just Seville. So are there discussions on how we can leverage other resources and capacities if we get those kinds of relationships going. And that has included efforts to create full and robust databases to see if we can asset map if there's these calls, who might be able to support that and bring the right resources in. So yes, that work is being done. Alex, the question for that, how often do the officers use their weapons? Are you talking about like shooting somebody?
No, I'm talking about any weapons, pepper spray, batons. How often would it make a difference if they didn't have a weapon?
So if you look on the website, we post every one of our use of force on the website as well. And when I say use of force, that includes using their hands on, and things of that nature. If you look at ours, very seldom. I think last year of the, let's say of the more than 60,000 calls, they answered in, say, well over 2,000 or so arrests. And again, I'm just citing numbers. Don't say it's the actual number. Someone will then say, oh, Chief Brackney said this is it. But I think our number last year was below 17 times, and that in just including if there's a push or a shove or something of that nature. Very seldom do they use their weapons. Last year, I don't, if I remember the year before, no canines. They may have used an impact weapon twice or a taser 3 times throughout the entirety of the year. So if you look on the website, we do post all of those. I also post a summary of those encounters, and I also post the highest level of force used and the race and gender of the officer and the race and gender of the subject. So those are on our website if that helps.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much what I was looking for.
And Alex, you should have the last couple of years on there for use of force, if I'm correct.
Andy, I think you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chief Brackney, for participating tonight. So in terms of the budget, since we don't have a way to kind of look at the particular ways that force is tasked with specific things, my question is, looking at your overall staffing, do you think the staffing is at the right number? Is there ways to reduce the overall staffing, or do you feel like you still need to increase? So, what's your sense of the overall staffing that's in the budget currently?
So our staffing for, if we're talking about sworn officers, so that's a very different than our overall staffing. Our overall staffing is for 119 sworn officers. We are not at 119 sworn officers at this time. I believe as of today, it may be 106. So we are short-staffed in terms of the calls, the volume of calls, and things of that nature. Now, remember, the entire number goes from the very first person who's sitting in the academy up to myself and every detective and everyone in between those persons. Andy, what I have done that I think has been much more responsive is that we were paying officers to do positions that are perform duties and responsibilities that were best served by civilians, who you could then bring into the organization, who help also when you bring people in who are doing different jobs from different communities and different perspectives, allow the organization to rethink how it engages the community. And I believe at this point now, I have civilianized more positions than anyone else. We have a civilian intelligence analyst, not a crime analyst. There's an intelligence analyst who does all the intelligence work for us. Our accreditations and policy, we've just hired them. We had a corporal doing that work who was not supervising anybody. It was just a single person. Best that it also saves the city money when we do that because the salary and benefits are lower. We took over, and the person who does our budget is a civilian. It was a lieutenant previously doing that work, not supervising anybody doing that work. That is now a civilian position. So it allowed me to reduce the budget. Actually, I've been the only one supporting and putting in reorganizations that has reduced my budget for the last 2 years by reorganizing it, coming in below what the budget has said that we should do. In addition to, I'm trying to walk through the positions in my head where we have been civilianizing. Our Fourth Amendment analyst that we hired. Originally, that was an officer, a retired returnee was doing that work. So now we do have an actual analyst who does that work. And everything around support, quartermasters, supplies, all of those things were being done by officers. Those are now done by civilians. Now, by replacing them has allowed me to increase the pay for our civilian workers who were in the city, the lowest paid individuals in the city, and fought to get their raises as well. So as we think about it, I would say based on this current community demands and the levels of violence in the community, but also calls that you may not have a community response that requires a more traditional police response and not one that we're trying to move towards. We are still severely understaffed, and oftentimes that means having to hire over as well. And I would not be, I would also have to say that we do have had our lately, our physical security assessor for the entire city is civilian as well. I will tell you that we are also having we are having officers leave the department to go to other agencies, which is then creating staffing shortages. So some people may indicate or be like, yay, less police. Actually, what it does is when you're understaffed, it costs you more because you then have to hire the officers back at time and a half or longer, or to keep them or to bring them in on overtime to meet your staffing needs.
And I'll just chime in because you said you increase certain members of the police department, you were able to increase their salaries. I think sometimes when people hear that, they're like, well, we don't want a police department, so we don't want anyone's salary increase. But I just want to explain that from an equity lens too. You know, we have had certain members of the community, some of them are admin at the police department who have been with the department for, you know, decades, and they have not been paid properly. So when she's saying, you know, was able to increase some staff salaries, it's those individuals. A lot of times they have been Black women in those positions. So it's just something I just want to point out there, if that becomes a question.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification about the different types of, you know, you have the sworn officers versus the staff. And I guess that's part of my question is then in terms of the sworn officers, you feel like you're understaffed currently in terms of the volume of responses and things that you're trying to meet?
Yes, Andy, that was exactly it, as well as Mayor Walker was saying, the members who I was able to at least get a pay increase for, that I have been fighting for 2 years to get them some sort of equity. All women, one male, and the majority of them were women of color. And it was just unconscionable that we had people working for the city for as long as they were being paid as poorly as they were being paid, with no one interested in any equity for them. So when we talk about policing or the CPD, I think that is an important point that we make, is that there are civilians, when you say defund the police, you can get, if we get rid of the Charlottesville Police Department, you are still also going to have to, it gets rid of civilians who are not sworn, who do work as well within the department. Work that is necessary.
If I could add real quick, and I know we all hope that, not all, but I know most of the people on this call would hope that one day we have a community where we don't need policing. And so then and I've said this before, I think we have a city that would be committed to finding those employee spaces other places. So this is not like we want to keep a police department to keep people employed, but there are also other, I think what Chief Brackney is saying, other positions other than the sworn officers.
Ernest, you've had your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor Walker. Thank you, Chief Brackney, for being here on this evening. Going back to something that Chief Brackney brought up back some time ago about the mental health side, I wanted to ask a question. Is UVA involved in that task force at all?
Is UVA involved specifically in the task force?
In that,
I think UVA has been in and out. I just can't remember. I don't recall 100%. The primary person is Region 10, because they are the ones who leverage the resources, even as the feeders into whether it's an ECO or a TDO that starts in UVA's hospital. And UVA has been not necessarily fully part of those discussions. And again, it's because who's going to respond if we're trying to remove the police from it? You're right. Is there an opportunity for what does bed capacity look like? And what happens, et cetera. But even like the bed capacity, they all report to a central system of what their bed capacity looks like throughout the state that Region 10 taps into as well. So they have been part of those discussions, particularly since on the 911 side, since UVA, the city, and Albemarle all were part of that 911 system in which they're dispatched from the same location or the same, central repository.
Okay, so I was asking that because I want to know, part of resources and the capacity side, they will be a huge help with the mental health, with that task force and helping us, because this is, again, something that you said we don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to do this alone. So we definitely need help from someone who has more resources and access to monies, and UVA is part of that.
Well, yeah, it's not even just the monies, as we're saying, is like they would then have to decide that they're going to create new beds or open up more spaces for beds, right? So I hear you, and Vice Mayor McGill and Councilor Snook are both the leads on that. I just don't recall all the individuals, but as I'm going through my head as a specific UVA representative, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and to me, it's not just beds, it's also people that have that ability to help with the mental health side as well. Not just, they can help Region 10 work on this with the city. Going back to something that Jessica was talking about being concerned about our community and touching on our community. And my other question to you was about the officer discretion. Data, I would love to see more about that, because I would love to hear how officers decide that they're going to engage with an individual and why, and what precipitated that.
And Chief Brackney, before you answer the second, if I can answer the first. So in our working group, this has also come up as a discussion about substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment centers, where we take people. I have had a couple conversations with the new Chief of Diversity and Community Engagement at UVA, Dr. Downs, and if he's able to do what he's been hired to do once he gets here. He is committed to figuring out what the community, and that community is broader than Charlottesville, of course. And when we think about this, I made this point in a meeting today, Albemarle County isn't necessarily as aligned right now with changing all of these systems. I think their prosecutor office, but we still have some work to do with the police chief. So once he starts July 1, he is committed to figuring out what those needs are and figuring out how to, and what kind of resources UVA is willing to allocate to that. And so that is a discussion that we are going to have, and he would be, I think, under Craig Kent. He has been hired to engage the community at this point. So we'll see what comes out, what comes out of that. But we know we don't have sufficient resources. If we need to divert, in our group, we've even talked about what is the responsibility if we tell the officers to not arrest someone who is drunk in public. The kind of discussions that we've had is, if we then just leave them to say people have a right to be drunk in public, and let's say it's freezing outside, that's not what we want either. We want to be able to take them somewhere so that they are safe, until they're able to make better decisions on their own. And so that has been discussed, and we know, in terms, even though we're a resource-rich community, which is where some of the feedback will come from, about if we can decrease the police budget to give to some of these other, other services that were needed. But I think it's back to Chief Brackney's point, is we're not at a point yet where we can decrease to send the money. So we have to figure out a way to fund both until the police are no longer needed. And that's typically where the discussion goes.
Thank you. And I guess my last question is, Chief Brackney, you brought up some about a group called Imagine a Just Charlottesville. Where can I find out information about that?
That's your mayor. She's the one who co-chairs that work group.
Okay.
Yeah, that was her. But yes, we're both part of it, and meet every other week talking about those issues. And then the work group on the Marcus Alert, trying to figure out that system. We meet the opposite weeks of those, of both, which I sit on as well.
Catherine?
Sorry. I wanted to actually come back to something much more sort of practical, maybe. When I first came on the Human Rights Commission, so I think that was about 2 years ago, at our retreat, in fact, we were told that one of our tasks had been a request from the police department that the Human Rights Commission do a policy review. And so we did that. We put quite a bit of effort into it. And I know that we had reached out a number of times to meet with you, with your designee, with perhaps counsel for the police department, because we didn't want to put the policies, our suggestions forward publicly without getting more input from the police department. And we were never able to schedule a meeting and have really never been able to complete that work. So I don't know if that's fallen through the cracks with various things that have happened over the years. How can we get that moving forward again?
So first, I'm not sure who asked to do a policy request. It was review, it wasn't me. So it had to have been before I arrived here. I know Charlene Green had asked, and I have my folder in front of me, in 2015, I believe, and possibly 2016, they had asked to do some work. I didn't get here until June of 2018. Charlene had asked and said that you all were doing some reviews of our policies. Our policies have been online since January of 2020. So I don't know what you were. When Charlene and I met, the ask from the HRC was to designate the liaison duties and responsibility officers so that you could, believe it was a grant that you all were going for. So about those, so about that. So, and as for reaching out, Catherine, I'm not sure. I've met with Charlene twice. I checked my calendar before she left here. I'd have one single ask, and that was in 2018 or early 2019. Could I attend a meeting that she had asked me to attend that was going to be the very next day? So I'm not sure who you're indicating reached out or who you would have reached out to. Or was it you who did the reaching out, or you just?
It was definitely not me who did the reaching out. I've only been on the Human Rights Commission for 2 years. So whatever happened in 2015, 2016 isn't what I'm talking about. Maybe Todd has a little more history. We weren't asking that you come to a meeting, a full commission meeting, but a working meet, not you necessarily, you, a designee, someone to a working meeting, but maybe Todd remembers, knows.
Yeah, I'll try to give a brief summary of what I knew. That was mostly something that Charlene was working on with the commission, but I do know that I think the commission had expressed interest in reviewing the bias-based policing policy, use of force, and then the general police constitutional policy. And so they did do some work on that. And I believe it all remained in draft form, the idea being that Charlene was trying to have a conversation with perhaps you, but I think Chief Brackney, but also I think with the city manager and the city attorney at the time. And I think to my understanding, and forgive me if I've gotten this mixed up a little bit, but my recollection is that there was never a time when all three or all four parties could make that work. And so I think that's where it languished a bit. And obviously there was some significant turnover in leadership at the city. So I think in that realm is where it may have gotten lost. And then we also had some turnover in commissioners. So yep, it's all still there. It's all public because it's public work by the commission. So, and it's actually in the agenda packet now for commissioners to think about once again if they so choose. But that's my recollection of the history of that.
Yeah.
Right. So that the HRC is the one who had suggested that they look at the work, not that this was a request from CPD.
That is my understanding. If anybody on the commission, Sue was around at that time, but I think that is where it came from, not as a request from CPD.
And our policies have been online. It was a commitment that the mayor and I had talked about. I believe it was like November or December of 2019. So they've been on since 2020, January of 2020. So if there's any input that the commission had wants to look at those policies and give some feedback on them. So,
well, we have a fair amount of work done. It's documented, and I guess we need to move that forward. So maybe Todd, we can work with you to figure out what the next steps are with meeting with the police department.
Yeah, what I would recommend here is, and so this is one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I said tonight, but so the PCRB is also, that's part of their charge, that they'll be looking at policy. So I think it's important for you all to connect with the PCRB too, to see where they are in that process, so that two groups won't be doing this simultaneously. And that's something, in terms of, and I think this was my response to Mary's email, I came on a few, I don't even remember the years, but at some point, I think in 2020, to just talk about, just where we were at and acknowledged, and that, the staffing needs needed to be looked at, that, you all have met Ashley now. That was my goal, that Ashley would get here. We thought that whoever would be in that position, it turns out to be Ashley. I'm thankful that she's here, but would then look at overall what the needs of human rights and PCRB. So there was some delay in both of those hirings. And so we're glad we're moving forward, with that, but all of that, and then the amount of turnover we've had at the administrative level, we've had a new council, 3 new counselors come on. So all of that kind of slowed the process for, where we are today. But I think in terms of at least now, since the PCRB is in place, whatever the original intention for the HRC was around that, I think there needs to be a collaborative effort with the PCRB board to see what that needs to look like. So I would just recommend that.
Hello, my hand's been up.
Yeah, actually, I think Alex was next and then Jeanette.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I'm sorry. Everybody wants to talk. It's been a good meeting. Alex,
Yeah, so circling back around to something that you said, Mayor Walker, you said you wanted to prevent some of the things that we've seen in police departments around the country from happening here. So my question is, are there any criteria that would prevent CPD from working with another police department? Like, would you ever refuse to do a joint training or something with a department that has a history of violence and human rights abuses and things like that?
Chief Brackney, if you could talk a little bit about the state mandates for training, maybe that would help answer that question. And then we've talked about trainings and what trainings I guess we would hope. That's been a part of the Imagining a Just Seville discussions, but maybe it'd help to clarify like how officers are currently receive their training. May help answer that.
So yes, so the initial training comes through a joint academy. The Central Shenandoah Valley is what we all are part of, and that's where they receive their basic curriculum. After they receive their basic curriculum, around their training, after that point in time, if it depends on what the rest of the DCJS, so it's the Criminal Justice Service, which we get our certifications from, they then mandate what training officers throughout Virginia receive, and we are part of those mandates. After that point in time, we've now created a 7-week curriculum ourselves where we see there might be gaps in the training around a variety of issues, community engagement, city policies, things of that nature. And then after that, the officers go into 3 months of field training. In addition to that, those trainings, they also receive things like crisis intervention training, crisis negotiations training. I've brought in specifically the Anti-Defamation League to conduct training with our team. And there's a variety of supplements of training that we can do. Unfortunately, the state only mandates 40 hours of training every 2 years. And it's just, it's pretty discretionary after a minimum of legal updates hours and, as they call them, cultural diversity hours. There's no streamline or uniform training throughout the state or even a mandate for the department. To cut down on that, I've mandated that our training unit identify all of the training for the 40 hours and that they're completed every year, not every other year, and that we have all of the officers trained in the exact same courses and the exact same curriculum, so that we are not having training or receiving training from agencies whose values or whose training may be against our policies, and then which we also don't have any control over what they're learning in one location and then bringing possibly back to Charlottesville Police Department. So their training is all now vetted individually, all the way up the chain of command through myself, any officer who wants outside training. We do a very detailed training request, the cost, the curriculum that's associated with it as well. Hopefully that answers from what I guess I heard Mayor Walker asking to build on.
Yeah, I just to provide some context, I was thinking of there was, I think, a training on bike patrols that happened a few days ago with RPD.
So it's IPEMBA is the national bike certification, and there are only certified IPEMBA officers, which is the mountain bike patrol kind of thing. It's the officers who you have to bring in to train you as the certified national trainers. So the Roanoke Police Department or the Richmond Police Department, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the Richmond Police Department, I think, is
It's
who
not
was.
their department. It is someone who is from their department who also is a certified IPEMBA. We have to get the IPEMBA trainers through IPEMBA.
Okay.
Jeanette?
Thank you. I echo other commissioners' expressions of gratitude for you all being here and taking your time. I was wondering, Chief Brackney, how you felt about the community efforts like the Buck Squad and the Peace in the Streets groups, and how that complements or challenges the work that your police are doing as a potential for, like, as we envision what other models there might be for responding to some crisis situations. What has your experience been with what's evolved in our community?
You want me to start?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And so both Buck Squad and Peace in the Street has been, you know, a lot of years of effort of trying to get some kind of grassroots approach to community healing. And so thankfully that, you know, there has been a response, you know, to that. If you look at our budget for Monday, and I was on the a call earlier with Peace in the Street, and then talked to Chip, you know, Chip about funding for them. They are on our budget for funding for Monday night, and we're trying to get them in a really, you know, much more, you know, comfortable space in terms of being able going outside of like our traditional funding cycle to try to give them some support so that they can do this work. And in the community, these are individuals who are most of the time either from the community, currently live in the community, or have family in the community. And a lot of the majority of people have been impacted negatively by the criminal justice system at some, you know, point in their lives, or a family member. So I think that it's really, you know, positive that they are one stepping up. And right now I'm talking specifically about Peace in the Street, and that they are trying to figure out, you know, how to support the community. Peace in the Street is looking at a approach that involves a lot of mentoring of youth, and some, you know, violence interruption, but the violence interruption piece is not their stronghold. I attended the first meeting that the Buck Squad had, so I've been in communication with them at the beginning. I'm not in, you know, communication with them as much for the past few months, so I can't speak on any efforts outside of what I see, you know, in the media. But the other counselors are have been engaged also with both groups in meetings. I don't know the frequency of that, but the city is very interested in making sure that we have other avenues, and that we get to, you know, a point where we may not be having some of the incidents that we are seeing occur in the community and that we can see if these alternative responses work.
Sue, I think you're up.
I've already forgotten what it was I was going to ask because we keep going into other areas. So I'll try to remember. I wanted to make a comment about the previous ad hoc committee on the police review of the policy, which we are charged with doing, of reviewing various local government policies. It's part of our charge, unless somebody's taken that away from us. You can tell I'm just a little crabby today. And that question came from, basically, we felt that the policy that we were reviewing was more geared to internal to the police than helpful to the community. That was the whole thing that came out of our review of the policy, as I recall it. And the recommendations that we made were basically to maybe increase a little more public understanding of what the policies are. I'm going to say personally, I've learned way much more than I need to know about the internal workings of the Charlottesville Police Department. I'm just sorry. I don't need to know all that. I just simply don't need to know that. And while I'm thrilled that you were here, Chief Brackney, to go through this for us, but I don't see where, actually, I keep grappling with the PCRB and the HRC and who should be reviewing what policies. If they're going to be reviewing policies like we've gone into tonight, why are we doing it? I could make a suggestion that, and this would be to Mayor Walker, that next time you add somebody to the PCRB, you might add somebody from the Human Rights Commission. Then we would see how we work together, where we overlap, where we are stepping on each other's toes, that sort of thing. Anyway, I think that's all I can say.
So I think my response is that the reason our policies are on the website gives the entire community, as well as organized boards and commissions, the opportunity to weigh in on our policies. What I can say to date, since they've been there since January of 2020, we've not had one person weigh in on our policies, to include the PCRB and the HRC. So I guess more my comment was when I was saying who's asking you to review the policies. If the charge is from HRC to review the policies, then I'm sure HRC is going to take that seriously and look at the policies that they believe impact their work and review it. I think the suggestion that you collaborate so that there's no redundancy and you're both working hard at the same policy is more the suggestion. And how might you be able to look at any of our policies so that it better informs your work and ours as well.
Chief Brackney, I wanted to just circle back to the question of the budget, and I had written this in the chat, but I just wonder if the police department has looked at options for having traffic enforcement handled by any other entity aside from the police. Is that something that you have explored?
In terms of what specifically? So like parking or something of that nature?
Yes.
Or are you talking, so that's already done by non-sworn civilians. There's CSOs who do our traffic enforcement as well. So they're not typically the police. If there's moving violations, that is of course governed by legislature as to, whether or not it is a criminal violation and what those enforcements are. And if you look at the new legislatures, there's a lot of new changes about when an officer can stop as a primary or secondary offense. But for the most part, 90 probably +% of our parking tickets and things like that are done through our community service officers.
So I know we've been at this a bit and we'll have to wrap it up. I just wanted to see if there were any kind of final questions or comments from the commission.
Chief Brackney, sorry,
go ahead.
you mentioned quite a bit of referencing to the website, and I'm trying to navigate it, and it's not as easy to find. Can you point to the report that you were saying, the reports that you were mentioning earlier? Do you have like direct links that you can send to us later?
Sure, but if the problem is the city manages it and won't allow us to have our own standalone, so you have to go to the city's website first, drop down to say police. Are you there to the police department? And I think it's like charlottesville.gov/police. All right, if you get there, you'll see something that says like statistics and data.
I see crime statistics.
Okay, there's another one that says just above it, that says data or police data. Hold on, let me look on my websites. Let me do it really quickly at the exact same time with you.
And our website is horrible.
It's the city's website that does not allow us to manage it. So don't beat up on me. It is.
No, I'm not. That's why I was asking you. You're more familiar than we are. So if
As we're doing it, I'll do it. I'll get it for you as we're speaking. I'm actually on the city's website now.
Yeah, so that is something that one of the things that we have to work to improve too. So you are not alone. We have difficulties finding the stuff that we need to find. And we've been having this discussion about transparency and budgets. And it's our attempt, hopefully, to have this budget online, all of it for all the departments. And that's, that discussion is challenging. So hopefully it's something, we just purchased this new thing. I don't know why it's not better, but it's a work in progress.
And then what you do is once you go onto the website, you go to crime data. And then when you hit that, you'll see department data. That's where everything is. So I just drop that into the chat. And that'll help you find all of your investigative detention summaries and things like that. But that's the city's managed. Sorry, every time we keep trying to get it cleaner and cleaner to make it easier to navigate, we are restricted by what the city will allow us to do. And Mayor Walker's right, this is brand new, and it is, I think, clunkier than the previous one. So Jessica, I don't know if you all can see it, if you get it. Okay.
Well, just on behalf of the commission, I wanted to thank again Mayor Walker, Chief Brackney for spending so much time with us this evening. I am certain that the commission will, have follow up, and you had offered to work with us, and I'm certain that's something that we're interested in pursuing, and we will certainly, be back in touch as a follow up. But we appreciate you being here and answering so very many of our questions this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.
Good night.
All right, just getting back to our agenda here. The next matter on the agenda is the chair update. And I in an effort to kind of move this along, I don't have much of an update. I would say we'll get to this when we talk about committees. The housing committee didn't really meet because there wasn't sufficient attendance for us to meet. But we are, but I am very interested in kind of reconvening our housing committee and making sure that we have, sufficient folks who are able to participate, because I do think the comprehensive plan is something that really needs to be evaluated from a human rights perspective. And I think that we would have kind of important observations on that front. So I'm hoping that's something that the Housing Committee can, kind of begin a review of, and that the commission is something that's something that the commission can take up. And that's, I don't really have an update beyond that, but I'll turn it over to Todd for the Office of Human Rights staff update.
Thanks, Mary. I'll also be brief. My report is attached. I won't go into any of the details on there, so you can certainly read it. If you have questions, please let me know. The only two things that I would bring up that aren't in there. First, just making a suggestion. You all are doing great work in terms of having formed some 4 ad hoc committees to try and get work done outside of the main commission meeting. And I wanted to make the suggestion that maybe the commission consider proposing during this meeting some standing days for those meetings, simply because doing the doodle poll, it was sort of a 3-dimensional doodle poll, if you so to speak, because we had multiple commissioners on multiple committees, and then trying to make sure that we scheduled so that all those commissioners could attend was quite difficult, and I'm sure difficult for you all as well. So from my perspective, and I have mentioned this to communications, and Lasheen may be listening in as well, but we do have our regular monthly 3rd Thursday meeting. Perhaps Thursdays, we could just say 1st and 2nd Thursdays could be our committee meeting days, and however many committees want to meet on those days, we can make it work. Probably 2 at a time, I would imagine, is probably the max you could do. So just putting that out there for your consideration. I think it might make it easier for everybody and more efficient. The other piece is that, and Ashley, I believe, is still on here. I'm kind of not looking at the main list here, but I just want to let you know that Ashley has invited me to be on the PCRB director interview panel, which is quite a kind of humbling honor. So I'm going to do that, and I'm not sure exactly the format of all that, but I wanted to let you know that I'll be on that, and I will hopefully, if I have a chance to mention anything about the commission, I'll do so. So that's about it. Sorry if I seem really tired. This has been like probably the most tiring month in my entire 3 years on this in this office. So I'm a little bit out of it a bit. So anyway, let me know if you have questions about the report.
I don't have a strong feeling about Thursday versus other days, but I completely agree that we should have set committee times. It's so hard kind of to schedule it last minute, but if we all have it on our calendars, that will work. So I don't know if we want to pick the day now, or, can we do that? Are folks okay with the Thursday day? I'm sort of indifferent as between various days. If we can go with that, then we can get that set up and on people's calendars.
I'm with you too.
Okay.
With you, Wolfgang.
All right. So we'll set that up.
Okay, so just to confirm, I will propose to communications 1st and 2nd Thursdays as committee meeting days. Do you want me to stick with the 6:30 time frame? 6:30 to, typically we budget 2 hours, so 6:30 to 8:30 time frame. Does that seem okay? Okay. If no one is opposed, that's what I will do. And again, I will please encourage committees to help with minutes, because that just takes a huge this is just a very personal request, just takes a huge burden of additional time off my plate, and I really appreciate that.
The one thing is that the earlier 5 p.m. time was better for me. That I think what 6:30 to 8:30 seems a little bit late, so I don't know if other people think the 5 o'clock start might be.
Wolfgang works till what hour?
That will be challenging for me during the school week, because that's pickup time for kids from after school. So I prefer it later, but I understand, Andy, too, want to accommodate you. Just like right now, it's fine for the summer because my kids are not in school, but I know for sure in the fall when they return that I won't be able to do that.
Sure.
Is anyone able to do a midday meeting? Or is that impossible? No.
I mean, yeah, I can.
It was a long shot.
We tried to do that. Like I could do lunchtime, but it seems like when we were trying to do that, people weren't coming. Can we ask that, Todd, like maybe flexibility, like one's a midday, one's a evening, depending on the committee?
Sure. I mean, it's kind of up to you all, what I propose to communications, and then basically if they can support it, then there you go.
Well, what if we stuck with this, Thursday, 6:30 time, and each committee can discuss among itself? If you all can come to a consensus about another time, then then we can move that. Does that make sense?
Janet has a question. Are we talking about the first and third or the first and second Thursday?
First and second, because the third Thursday is this meeting, the commission meeting. And Ashley just sent me a message in Teams that wanted me to remind you that you will, once we go back to in-person meetings, you will have to meet in person by state law. So you may want to factor that into your thinking about time.
Todd, is there a plan for going back in person?
As far as I know, it's not until after, what's the September day? That's not Memorial Day, it's Labor Day. I think it's after Labor Day sometime. I don't even think it will be before then. Ashley, please correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I personally am a little annoyed that it's going to take the city that long when Governor Northam is opening everything up, removing the emergency restrictions as of July 1st.
Yeah, I think it's in flux.
Pieces. The city isn't rushing back.
I think it's in flux
As
too.
every restaurant in town is open fully.
Yeah.
And City Hall is closed up.
I think it's still in flux. As you probably guess, everybody's still sort of figuring it out and reacting, but it's not my decision, but I will certainly communicate that to you when I know.
I mean, I've tried, have to make an appointment to get on the first floor of City Hall is ridiculous. I don't mind wearing a mask in there, but to have to make an appointment to get into City Hall, and they're not even open on Fridays. I should have said this while Mayor Walker was still on.
Not really a human rights issue though, is it, Sue?
From my perspective, it is. Yeah.
All right. Well, I
discriminatory, basically.
I'm not sure whether they cut us off at 8:30. That's why I'm kind of rushing through, because I want to make sure we get to all of the matters on our agenda. The next thing we have are the ad hoc committee reports, and the first one up is accessibility committee.
I'll go fast. We got 3 things. We met, it was great. We put a plan together to do outreach. We are doing outreach.
That is a fabulous report.
2, happy Juneteenth, happy Pride. 3, yeah. And 3, the ADA coordinator, it quit this week. So that is 5 ADA coordinators here and gone in 3 years. Should we look into this? I'm concerned that there's 1, little continuity, and 2, this is important work, and maybe we need to center it in a place that has just more continuity, but people at the center. That's my take. I'm out. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. That was actually a terrific report. Community Engagement Committee.
Yes, Wolfgang with the mic drop. I'll try to be succinct as that. We met, it was a great meeting. We have some action items, one being a resolution that we are drafting and putting together. We've also considered working on documents that have plain English there. So it's easier to understand. And so we'll also be working on some brochures There's a great brochure that Todd has put together, and we're thinking about just adding a few more. It's great information, but when we're doing outreach with Todd, which was awesome, there were some who were like, what is Human Rights Commission? What is this? Like, what would initiate me reaching out to Human Rights Commission? And so that's what we'll be working on. So in short, we met, it was great. We have some action items, and we'll hopefully be able to have a resolution and more to share in our next meeting. Did I miss anything, gang? Okay, good. Mic drop.
You guys are fantastic. The next thing up is the Housing Committee report. Tabia is not with us, but she has indicated that she is not able to continue serving as chair of the Housing Committee. So that we are going to need to identify a new Housing Committee chair. Sue and I got together, and because the other members of the committee couldn't join us, we decided to not meet and to reconvene hopefully this month, this coming month, and to have a meeting and elect a new chair.
So I would be willing to chair if that's of interest.
That is completely fabulous. And I think Tabia is still on the committee. I think she just I didn't talk to her about this. This is a message that, but my understanding is she just didn't feel able to serve as chair at this moment. So, and then we have the Legal Representation Committee.
Didn't meet. Did we meet? We didn't meet.
We didn't meet.
Okay.
I was there, but I don't think anybody else was.
I was there too. We waited for a long time.
We waited, yeah.
I was
That's
in a link that nobody else was on. I don't know.
Oh, no.
Okay, well, we're going to solve this problem by having our set
Right.
dates, and then everything is going to move smoothly.
To
All right.
round this off, I don't think I still heard the times that I'm asking communications for on the first and second Thursdays. I'm sorry if you said it and I missed
I
it.
thought we were going to go with 6:30, and then in the committee meetings themselves, if people want to agree on a different time, that is fine, and that will be then disclosed and,
Thank you. Thank you for coaching my tired brain through this.
that is okay. So we will move on to matters by the public. You can either raise your hand or if you're on the phone, press *9 if you would like to participate as a matter by the public. So I take it we have no matters, no public comments. All right. Then I guess we don't have a commission response to matters by the public, and we will move on to updates from commissioners.
I'll just report on the statewide VAHR, Virginia Association for Human Rights. They did hold their annual meeting on the first Saturday in June via Zoom, and was a little chaotic, but we got through it. They did approve new bylaws, and what I think I'll do is, if I can get them in the format that needs to be in, because we had them in what I call the red letter format, where the old ones were showing and the changes were showing, and it's very difficult to read. So I'll get them out to all of you. One thing I do want you to be aware of is that the year for the VAHR does start July 1. Well, actually, the bylaws actually says it starts at the end of the meeting, which means June, whatever. But we are supposed to have a representative from each Human Rights Commission on what is now called the board of directors. Some of them are members, volunteer members. Some of them are staff. It's just whoever wants to apparently connect to that strange little group. Todd, do not ever say anything about how I'm describing them. But it's I happen to be on the executive committee. I am their parliamentarian. Isn't that exciting? And right now I'm the only one that is representing Charlottesville on that whole commission. So I think you all need to decide who you want to have be the point person for this commission on the VAHR. And like I say, it can be a board member, a commission member, or office staff person, because there are several office staff people that are on that. Anyway, I'm just bringing that up. I will get out to you the bylaws just so you know what the heck we're working on.
Maybe we could put that on the agenda for next meeting.
Oh, I
too.
could do that.
It's okay. Other commissioners have updates?
I just always want to give a shout out to Molly, who's always live tweeting our meetings. So I appreciate that. And thank you, Mary, for getting Mayor Walker and Chief Brackney here tonight.
Yeah, that was really nice, really informative.
Yeah, and I think we may want to schedule some time at our next meeting to discuss follow-up so that we don't lose kind of our energy about those issues. And we could, you know, I'm not going to propose this at this moment, but we could even have a committee that looked at that. But I propose to just put it on the agenda for the next meeting and we can talk about it as a group.
Hey, folks, just a quick note. I know that several have asked about the subtitles, and I just got a message from Lasheen. Her computer has been locked for the past hour and a half, and she's been watching it on her phone, trying to make sure that nothing crashed. So that's why we don't have subtitles. So poor Lasheen, we're very lucky that everything worked out fine. So.
Any other updates before we adjourn? All right, well, yep.
So I
Go
just
ahead,
want to make clear, I definitely would love for us to follow up. And as I'm thinking about what Chief Brackney said about a lot of the information being on the website, I know that it's there somewhere, but even tonight trying to find it, it's not anyone's fault. But I think within our commission, as we're even trying to make our things more clear, I think that's kind of stuff I would like to take on. Like, it's not accessible, and you can say all day long it's on the website, but if it's hard to navigate, 20 clicks, then I have to download it, then I have to, no one's going to do that. So we can't provide feedback when people can't find it and make it accessible. Another great case for us to have a social media presence where we can start chunking this stuff up and getting that feedback. And one thing that we're allowed to do as our commission is host like informal meetings to the public to hear what they're saying. But if we have this information a lot more easily accessible for them and ready for them, I would say I'd love to do that. It hurt a little bit when she said she didn't see our statement. That's I don't know what we need to do to make that happen, but that's I don't know, I'm not one person to blame, but that like hit me in my gut, like, okay, that's not a good thing. So again, I understand what she's saying about communication. So I just want to put that out there.
All right, well, if there are no other updates, then I guess it is time to adjourn. We'll have committee meetings in the next month, and we've got a couple of, follow-up agenda items on next month's agenda. So everyone have a really great evening. Thank you all for participating so well this evening. Thanks.
Thank you.